Welcome. You're watching the Moody Lawyer. Justice served with experience and integrity.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Skye. Welcome to episode 3 of The Moody Lawyer. Today, we'll be speaking with Josh Moody, a seasoned attorney from Southern California with a rich background in law enforcement and comprehensive legal career spanning criminal justice, personal injury, and civil matters. Let's dive in. Josh, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
So, Josh, can you explain what a typical PI case involves and how it's generally structured from start to finish?
So a PI case, personal injury, typically involves somebody getting in some sort of, we'll start with car accidents. The average person is just driving along, minding their own business, and somebody is negligent and will either run a stoplight, run a stop sign, or rear end them, and they get injured. At some point, maybe they go to the hospital, they go to urgent care, and at some point they call us. When you call us, we try to get you through the steps to make sure you preserve your case, because the case starts at the scene. If you have pictures or if there's a police report, we need you to get all of that stuff, or at least get the information so that we can get it. And then you come in, you sign up with us, we start preserving your evidence. And your medical record, people don't understand and don't realize your medical records are evidence. So we want to make sure that we keep documenting your injuries, and we show you and tell you how to document those injuries, so that way when you get better, that we're ready to move your case forward. You'll spend however long you need to treat. And what we mean by treat is by going to your doctors, listening to your doctors. Your doctors will either tell you that you're at the best that you're ever going to get, or you're as good as you were 5 seconds before the accident. Then we take your case, we find out who the defendant's insurance company is. We make a settlement demand. Depending on what their response to our demand is, then we take the next steps in the case.
So someone comes to you with a personal injury case. They're a client with any number of problems. What are the first steps you take?
One, what are your injuries and what are you doing to get fixed? Because I'll tell you right now, no injury and no loss is worth any amount of money. If you're not better, there's no amount of money that's going to make it better. So your health is the most important thing in any case. So that's probably the most important thing. And then 2 is, okay, what are your injuries and what are your steps, or what are your doctors telling you the next steps are for you to get better? So that's the most important thing. And those are the next steps. And my job at that point is to make sure we know who you're going to, or you're at least keeping a record of who you're going to. So that way we can preserve your evidence and preserve your medical records. And then at the end of your case, or at the end of your treatment, get your medical records so that we are not missing anything, and so that we have evidence of your injuries. Because preservation of evidence, and like I said, your medical records are evidence, is so important, because we know, and you're going to tell everybody that you're injured. Everybody knows that you're injured, but without some type of third-party verification, people are very leery of people just claiming that they're injured. So we need that evidence, and we want to hold on to that evidence and keep that evidence for your case. So that's usually the first part. And and a lot of people just don't keep that when they don't have a lawyer. Pain is a very powerful motivator, because if you're in pain right now, you continue to treat in the next and let's say you treat for 6 months with a doctor, you're not going to remember every day. You're not going to remember every week. And those are things that the defense will bring up. They're going to ask you very specifics. Well, if you have medical records and you have medical doctors and you have appointments and visits who are documenting this, it helps you remember how you felt, because maybe 2 years later, you don't remember. And you might be sitting in my office saying, I'm never going to forget this because this pain is very, very powerful. But time does heal wounds. You may not remember those specifics. So that's why it is very important to have those medical records and medical documentation.
It's a great point. Memory really is a tricky beast. Beyond the medical records, what do you typically need? What kind of information do you need during a client consultation, that initial consultation?
So in an initial consultation, other than medical records, we need basically everything you would need for a police report. If there was a police report, do we have the police report number and the officer who took the report? We need your car information, your driver's license information. We need the person who hit you, their car information and their driver's license if you have it. A lot of people don't have the other person's name or information, but if you get the license plate, we can always make inquiries to the DMV. So those are the things. And then we also need your proof of insurance and your insurance information from your insurance company. And the reason we need that is because in California, we have what's called Proposition 213. If you do not have insurance in the state of California, you cannot receive compensation for pain and suffering. And that is because that is a public policy issue. That is because the voters of the state of California felt that if you don't buy insurance and somebody else injures you, you should be denied compensation for your pain and suffering. So this is one way they use that to force people to buy insurance. So we will need you to bring in your proof of insurance so that we can show that you are entitled to these damages.
Can you give us an example of how you assess the worth of a case, particularly in those personal injury claims?
So that's always the famous first question is, what's my case worth? I don't care if it's a minor fender bender or if somebody's tragically killed. The day you walk into your office, the answer is, I don't know. I wouldn't trust any attorney who gives you a valuation the day you walk into a court or the day you walk into an office, because I don't know. We value a case after we have all your medical bills, after we know how much work did you miss, looking at the injuries you sustained, looking at the loss you sustained if somebody was killed. What was the value of their working? What was the value of their compensation packages? It takes months to determine what a case is worth. So it's not a very simple of coming on in and, well, I can tell you right now that this case is worth $100,000. You don't know. But 6 months from now, I might know. Once I get everything, I can know. And the value also is dependent on how much insurance is on this case and what's the policy of both parties, because that can determine the value of a case as well. That's the number one question is people come in and they want to know, what is their case worth today? And values of cases, they change over time too. Your case may be worth more 6 months from now than it is today, and it may be worth less. You just don't know. Until you have everything in front of you, there's just no way to tell. It can be anywhere from a few months to a few years, depending on the extent of the injuries, depending on the extent of treatment. It can be anywhere from a few months to a few years, depending on doctors. And look, I mean, doctors are people too, but people think that we just make a phone call and they send over medical records. It usually takes anywhere from 30 to 60 days to get medical records from doctors. And, the doctors that we work with on a regular basis, they're pretty good about getting them over in a few weeks. But doctors have hundreds, if not thousands of patients. And they're working with, not only are they working with attorneys, but they're working with other doctors. They're working with surgeons. They're working with insurance companies. They're working with people who need to get medical records for their reasons too. So medical records might take a few weeks to a month to get those. And then billing is a whole nother issue too, because doctors are worried about your injuries and they're worried about their reports, but doctors don't typically do their billing. They have a whole separate division that does their billing for them. And the people who do billing don't have the same priorities as people who do medicine. Yeah,
you mentioned billing. I think that's a pretty relevant part here. What advice do you have for clients who are worried about the potential costs of pursuing a legal case?
What I always tell them is you do what you need to do to get better, and you let us worry about the rest, whether it be the bills or the cost of the suit, because we will keep you apprised. I mean, I'll keep you updated and keep telling you what your bills are, what your costs are, and whether or not there's insurance to cover those costs. The last thing we want is somebody to run up the cost of a lawsuit and there's not enough money on it. The case either isn't worth that amount of money or there's not enough insurance to cover those costs. So we will keep you updated and keep you apprised of the costs associated with your case, because again, if you're not recovering money, I'm not recovering money, and that's an easy way to go out of business.
What does that evidence building process look like, and how do you build a strong case for your clients?
So it starts with the scene. It starts with pictures, starts with your injuries. It continues with your medical records. Anytime, we have investigators here that I will call up and say, hey, can you go out and interview a witness, or can you go out and look at this intersection? A big thing too is looking at the area. If it is like some type of stop sign or stop light, how many accidents have been there in the past? Is this a known intersection that the city or the state or the county knows is a dangerous intersection? That's something that we look into all the time. research and continue to look at in building that case. And photographs are very important as well, because photographs can really debunk a lot of statements made by the defendant, because the defendant's always going to, even if they rear end somebody, they're always going to try to blame the other person. Oh, you stopped too soon, or you stopped, you had a green light, or what. I've heard it all. So photographs and keeping those photographs is important. Just in my advice too, and I always tell people when they come in, I need copies of those photographs. Please, we have a system set up where you can email them and it goes into your file, but keep them as well. Keep them on your phone. Don't delete them.
How often do you see that happen where people lose evidence like that?
It happens every once in a while. Usually it happens because their phone dies or it crashes and they end up getting a new phone. But when they come in, I stress it a lot. I'd say like 10 years ago was kind of a thing, but this next generation, people are keeping photos on their phones forever. And everything's backed up to the cloud, whereas like 10 years ago, kind of you had to back it up to a computer. So it does happen, but I'd say a lot of times when it happens is because my phone crashed and or got locked out and I didn't save it to the cloud. So, but I do stress, that's why I do stress when people come in, back it up and keep it, because you're going to need it.
We were touching on private investigators. What role do they play in the process, and how do they collaborate with your legal team?
I deal with them directly. I send them out and say, hey, look, this is what I need. I need A, B, and C, and here's the issue in the case. Whether it be, if the issue might be causation, the issue might be maybe a disputed red light, maybe the issue is an obstruction, something blocking the intersection. So I tell them, and the investigators I have are either current or former traffic investigators. So they know exactly what I'm talking about, and they're very skilled at what they do. And another big thing is, talking to witnesses. I typically, I'm an attorney. You can't talk to witnesses because I can't testify for witnesses. So I send out an investigator. Hey, tell me what this witness said. And if we call them as a witness, what would they testify to?
So you've gathered the photos, you've got the private investigator, you've gathered your evidence. From this point on, can you describe the legal procedures involved in a personal injury case, from filing the claim to potential court proceedings?
Yeah, so at that point, that's where we make a formal demand to the defendant's insurance company. The ball's in their court at that point. They want to make an offer, they can do that. If they make an offer that we don't like, we will then decide, we'll go over everything with the client. I can tell you this, the first offer is always a lowball offer. Don't ever take their first offer. But we do get to a point where you negotiate and, we run it by the client and say, okay, look, this is how much money you're going to get in your pocket. And I'm honest with them. I say either this is a good offer or it's not a good offer. If it's not a good offer and I think we can get more, I'm going to tell you that then we're going to file a lawsuit. And then when we file a lawsuit, I explain, hey, this is what we're looking for and this is what we're going to do. We then file it with the court. And I will tell you that in this county, when we file a case with the court, our first court date is about 6 to 8 months away from the filing date. Filing a lawsuit is not quick. It does take time. It does take money. We will do it. And we have lots of cases that we're in litigation.
You emphasize a hands-off approach from a client perspective. Can you elaborate on how you manage a case so clients can just focus on recovery?
We have our paralegals here that will keep up to date with you during your medical procedures and whatever, and your visits. But the client, you're the one who's in the pain. You're the one who's in pain, and you're the one who's listening to what your doctors are telling you. So you need to listen to what your doctors are telling you, but just keep a note and keep documenting the doctors you go to and the dates you go to, and make sure you get that information to us so that when you're done, that way we know where to look. And the last thing we want is to miss a doctor or miss a visit or miss an entire series of visits because nobody told us. So that is very important.
To that point, doctor's appointments and managing evidence, what measures do you take to minimize the stress and burden on clients during this entire legal process?
I can tell everybody who comes in, you worry about getting better. You worry about getting yourself fixed, and you let us worry about contacting the insurance companies and contacting the police, because you're going to be spending enough time going to doctors. You don't need to worry about talking to the other insurance company. You don't need to worry about trying to get the police report from the local police department. You don't need to worry about trying to worry about your property damage. We'll worry about all of those monetary things. You worry about the physical things.
So they worry about getting better. How do you handle the financial aspects of a personal injury case, legal fees, costs, et cetera?
The client doesn't have to worry about any of those things because we will front all the costs. And we believe in your case. That's why we take your case. And when you have a settlement or a judgment at the end, you'll just pay us back. That's another thing that a client doesn't have to worry about while they're going to the hospital or going to the doctor, or if they're having surgery. I mean, if you're having surgery on something, the last thing you want to worry about is, a $300 bill to some doctor or some insurance company to get some report. Surgery is a very stressful thing. Trust me, I've had several. You don't want to worry about those minor things, because you're worried about going under and you're worried about feeling sick when you wake up and then you're in pain. And so you worry about you and we'll worry about your case because, we are in the business of getting money for your injuries, but your health is way more important than any amount of money. Your health is far more important, and your health is something you need to worry about. And it's something I can't help with your health because I'm not a medical doctor.
So true. Josh, what are realistic outcomes clients can expect from a personal injury case? How do you manage those expectations?
Yeah, so managing expectations is an important part because a lot of people think, every case is worth $1 million, and unfortunately they're not. But we try to keep you updated on what your bills are, what your costs are. And by telling you what your bills are, and especially at the end, we can tell you what your bills are, what you're looking at and having to pay back your insurance company or the doctors, and what your medical records show. That is oftentimes the real value in your case. And that's good too, because sometimes I will talk to a client, which just recently as a couple of weeks, her medical records showed that she had 3 broken ribs, and we were discussing them, but none of her records had shown anything about her cervical spine. We were missing that. And so it was through talking to her and through her that the doctor who had sent over these MRIs had missed an entire hour of her MRIs and her stuff. So she's telling me all these things that she'd done. And I'm like, I don't have any of that. So we had to recall the doctor, and they finally sent us over everything. But that's how we keep, managing expectations, in the sense that, when I tell you, these are what the doctors are telling us, and they're like, clients well, I also have this. Oh, well, we don't have that. So that's how, but communication is key.
What do those outcomes typically look like? What's the range of outcomes you see?
Every case is different, and it ranges from anywhere from a few $1,000s to millions of dollars and everywhere in between. Unfortunately, a lot of times people don't pay for enough insurance, and they do not get the amount of money they should get because they don't buy a lot of insurance. I have a case right now, very nice lady, minding her own business, and somebody was negligent and ran into her, and she suffered some severe injuries, and she has a very minimal insurance policy to cover herself, and the person who hit her, of course, has no insurance. So she, we looked at everything, the intersection, and unfortunately she's going to get the amount of money that she pays for. So that can also always hinder your case, is if you pay for the minimum amount of insurance. I always tell people, assume the person who hits you has no insurance, so cover yourself. But yeah, in terms of range, it ranges from anywhere from a few thousand to millions of dollars and everywhere in between. And it's just a matter of getting people to pay.
Yeah, it's an enormous range and an interesting point on insurance for sure. What are the trends you see in the field of personal injury law that it might impact how cases are handled in the future?
Big trends that we have to overcome is, it seems like jurors and juries are a lot more skeptical nowadays than they are in the past. People will go in, and our clients will go in and say, I was injured, I'm in pain, I'm never going to be the same. And unless a jury has something to look at, they are like a broken bone or a compressed spine or, like I said, broken ribs, unless they can look at that, and nowadays head trauma, TBI. I have a case where, we were able to look at the scans and show the difference of her injury post-accident, and it took several weeks for it to get better. Juries like to see that. But if it's, back and neck pain or arm pain or leg pain and there's nothing broken, juries are very skeptical because they're always thinking people like me, people like us are trying to enhance their injuries to make it sound worse than it is. So that's something we have to overcome. And people are getting more and more skeptical. The other thing that we're trying to overcome is, let's just face it. We're sitting here, it's 2024. Money is not worth the same today as it was even 4 years ago. Getting compensation for future damages and even just your past damage. I have plenty of car accidents from 2020, 2021 still that we're still working on. Inflation is a real thing. Value of cases is a real thing. And those are things that we're trying to work with. And the bigger the case, the more important it is. Wrongful death cases or future medical care cases. What is the value? It might cost $5,000 a treatment today, but what's that going to cost in 2030? What's it going to cost in 2035? Is this inflationary period we're in, is that going to continue? Is it not? Of course, the defense is always going to say, no, inflation is under control now. Of course, we're saying it's not because, nobody wants to take an amount, we don't want to win an award on the low side. And then next year we have another 20% inflation. That's just going to, once you're awarded that money, you're done and over. You can't go back to the jury 5 years from now and say, hey, I wasn't expecting the economy to do this. So that is definitely a change in development in the personal injury field for sure.
Why do you think those juries are more skeptical? How do you overcome that?
I think society as a whole is becoming more skeptical. And we've even talked about, I think on previous podcasts, you and I, about earning people's trust. And I think people are generally more skeptical. There's more information out there. There's podcasts now. There's you have the internet on your phone. You have, all kinds of social media. So I think people in general are skeptical. And I think that bleeds into the general, because a jury is a representation of the community of where the jury pool is coming from. It is a jury of your peers. And I think that bleeds into the jury itself. And nobody, including juries, nobody wants to be fooled. They don't want to look stupid. So they are skeptical. And that is something that is, even on cases, on wrongful death cases, are you worried about some sort of fraud? And they always are, and juries are always skeptical. And especially if people like me, they think that we're trying to exacerbate the injuries or make it sound worse than it is. And we're really not. We're just telling you how it is. We're always trying to make things sound worse, but they say nothing about the defense attorneys who are trying to minimize, this person's injuries or this person's death. I always find that funny when they go into court and say, well, they just hurt their back. Anybody who's ever hurt their back knows that's a very pain. Your back or neck, it affects everything you do. It's okay for them to walk in and tell a jury that it's just a minimal injury. But if we try to make it sound too bad, then we're the ones who are defrauding everybody. So that is definitely a concern when walking into court. When
we look at some of the things like media developments, the changing landscape, how do you stay updated with legal developments and continue to provide the best service for your clients?
Continuing education through the state bar. There are groups and associations that I belong to where we continue our training. But a big part is just associating with other lawyers and especially associating with other good lawyers. There are a lot out there. There's some good attorneys that I choose to be around and they choose to be around me. And we discuss our cases, and just in casual conversation, you can stay up to date on legal updates and legal matters and just the trends that are occurring in this county.
As we wrap up, if we were to give our viewers one major takeaway for personal injury and personal injury law, what would that be?
Don't wait. The sooner you call us, it may sound trivial, but even waiting a few days or a few weeks can change the value of your case drastically. When you are feeling better, give us a call as soon as you can. And you don't even have to come in anymore. We are set up, we can send everything by email. You can fill out all the information. Now you can sign everything on your phone or your iPad. There are often times where even waiting a few weeks can change the value of your case several $1,000s. So don't wait, call us and let us get started on it and getting started and telling you how to make your case more valuable.
That's an important point to finish on. Please remember to like and subscribe, and you can learn more about Moody Law at moodylawyer.com. Josh, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.